It's back. He has two back. He's done it. Sharma has done it. And the delirious.
Hello and welcome to The Last Wicket, a cricket podcast that has no time for cliches. We just let our talking do the talking. I'm your host, Benny, and I'm joined by my co-host, Mayank.
Hey, everyone.
Nish.
Hello, everyone.
And Himanish.
Hi, everyone.
And today we will be speaking with ground announcer, TV presenter, and host of sporting events, Jake O'Flaherty from New Zealand. We will be talking to him about his stadium announcer job, the coexistence of men's and women's cricket in New Zealand, as well as his take on the upcoming World Test Championship final between India and New Zealand. But first, let me check in with my crew. It's been a while since we all recorded together. How have you guys been? Nish?
Hello, everyone. I've missed you guys. It's been 3 weeks since I last participated. I've been good. I was in California for a week, which was amazing. Recharged my batteries, and I'm back in the good old Michigan. But the positive thing is that I'm back here, energized and ready to go for the upcoming podcasts.
I was not sure you'd be coming back because I'm assuming the weather was much better out there.
Yes, that was a very, very good point to consider coming back that early. But surprisingly, Michigan's weather is also in the high 60s. So, it's all worked out well for me. So it's good.
All right. Well, that's good to hear. Well, I'm glad you got your break, and I'm glad to hear that you're back recharged and refreshed. What about you, Mayank? What's been going on?
My first dose of the COVID vaccine, so glad about that. And
oh, yay. Congrats.
Like Nish said, I mean, I can't wait to go back to travel. For somebody who used to be on the road 45 weeks in a year, being home 45 weeks straight has been a little challenging. It's been a little boring, but yeah, I'm excited that it's getting nice and warm, and we've been like putting together our patio furniture. So looking forward to spending time outside of the house, as well as, just once we do get our second shot, get a little bit of travel in as well.
Yeah, man, travel is what I think a lot of us have missed. I know that I've missed it. We got to go to Virginia Beach last weekend, and it was nice just to get away from work and everything else. So I'm really looking forward to traveling more once most of these restrictions lift. What about you, Himanish?
Yeah, I need a break in my life because my paper is not close to finishing. Although I've done quite a bit, I've got some good results. So I'm just writing it up now. But yeah, generally it's been busy. I've been making plans to go back home over the summer. It's been 15 months now since I was in Delhi. And unless I have kebabs, I can't complete my year. So
you need to get your kebab recharge.
Yeah, kebab recharge. So yeah, it's been a little painful. Yeah, it's been busy. I got my vaccine too last week or last week. Now waiting for the second one, and it'll be good to go. Yep.
Good stuff. Yeah, I was, funny story. So as you guys know, that I work in cancer research or enrolling patients in clinical trials, cancer patients into clinical trials. And one of the perks of my job is that, I get to develop like good relationships with my patients, and they're typically, all the 60 plus, 70 plus year old women, and they know me well. They treat me like one of their own grandson, and we shared a lot about like just how we have been getting through these COVID times and all of that stuff. So recently I had a very memorable conversation with one of my patients who she was asking like, so what are you up to these days? And I was like, well, I started a podcast recently. And she's like, oh, what podcast is it? And I was like, I started a cricket podcast. And then this is a 65-year-old American woman. Okay. And she's like, you started a cricket podcast? I'm like, yeah, it's just fun to talk about cricket in like different countries and talk to people who like cricket. And then I can see that she's, she wants to go along with my passion. And she's like, oh yeah, okay, good for you. I'm glad you get to talk about crickets. And I was like, that should have been my red flag, first of all. Right. That should have been my red flags, right? So she was like, I'm glad that you like crickets. And I still kept talking. I'm like, yeah, a lot of my friends, we are Indian fans. So we talk about like Indian cricket, and then we'll talk to others about cricket in their own countries. And she's like, I didn't know that, crickets have such passionate fans everywhere. And I was like, yes, you have heard of cricket, right? And she was like, yeah. Obviously cricket is everywhere. And I think at that time I was like, I was like, cricket, the sport. And she was like, oh, okay, that makes sense.
You should be glad she wasn't talking about the mobile network cricket,
That is
because
true. I
that would
mean,
have been weirder, right?
yeah, they'd be like, yeah,
You're
you're talking
celebrating a
about,
company across the world.
yeah, she would have been very, very
That's a very
confused.
niche podcast right there.
Yeah. I mean, like, you know what? There probably is a market for cricket podcasts. So who knows? Maybe someone will get that idea. Who knows? Maybe it's already out there. I need to go and search this later. But anyway, that was that was a memorable one. So for a very brief moment in time, we were doing a completely different kind of cricket podcast. Well, today we will be speaking with someone whose job has always fascinated me. The stadium announcer is such an integral part of sporting encounters, and occasionally hearing snippets of the announcing on TV does not do justice to the work they do for the fans at the stadium. So, with that in mind, I'm so excited to have with us someone who has years of experience as a ground announcer in rugby and cricket in New Zealand. We look forward to talking with him about his job and lots more about New Zealand cricket. So, Jake O'Flaherty, welcome to The Last Wicket.
Thanks, guys. How are you?
We're all doing good. We're all basking in the recent series win that India had over England. So we're all in a very good mood. But Jake, let's talk about you. Like I mentioned, always been fascinated about the cricket announcer job. I just wanted to kind of get an idea how you got into that. Like, I don't even know what is the process to. I know it varies in different countries, but at least in New Zealand, what is the step for you to get into the field, or what even drew you to it in the first place?
Yeah, well, it was quite interesting. I thought, what a cool job, right? I used to go to sports matches, and I'd take in what the announcer was saying or doing and so forth. So it was quite. I was quite observant as a kid, but never really thought, I could do that, because I never thought that I had the ability to do it. But then, basically, when I was growing up, I'd sort of developed a bit of an announcer's voice, some people were telling me. So I ended up volunteering for a sports team in Thames. It was a Thames Valley rugby team, and look, 200 people would go to their games. It was nothing big. They were the worst team in the competition at that point, and it was all a bit grassroots. They ended up winning the competition the next year, which was great, but nonetheless, it was good to just sink your teeth into a team that you had no pressure. But that was my World Cup. I took it. That was my my Black Caps. That was it was so fun, and I enjoyed it so much. So I started there, and I did all that for free. And I don't even think they had anyone before me, so it was kind of just, oh yeah, Jake, you can have this. And then after that, someone had said, hey, look, there's a netball game in Te Araha, which was the same sort of region as the Thames Valley rugby team. And these guys, it was a pre-season for a professional team. So not many people went, but I ended up doing the announcing for that. And I said to them, hey, look, I'll do the whole season for free for you, because I thought, I just want to have some fun with this. So I ended up doing their season for free, and that was probably in front of about 1,000 people every game. Wow. And then Netball New Zealand saw me from there and said, hey, look, do you want to do the Silver Ferns, which is the national side, up against England? And that was, I think, around about 10,000 people at Spark Arena, one of the arenas in Auckland. And that was great fun. And it all sort of built in about a year's time to that point. And then from there, there was a contact with New Zealand Cricket, who said that New Zealand Cricket were looking for a new announcer. And so I'd asked for an email address and put that email through, and someone had linked me through as well. And from there, it was pretty crazy. I ended up having a meeting with New Zealand Cricket. They'd had their last guy for about 20 years. So I was thinking I'm a great long shot as a young guy. So, but I managed to get it, and the rest is history. It's my third season now with the Black Caps, and do a bit of rugby stuff on the side still too. And so yeah, I'm really enjoying it. But it's a crazy story, and it's a story that's sort of, a lot of luck is around it. So I met the right people at the right time, and managed to, sort of weave my way around, and meet the right people, and and get the right opportunities at the right time.
And it seems like a very quick progression because you started with probably hundreds of people moving to thousands. Do you ever get conscious of the fact that you're essentially speaking to thousands of people? It's just one voice. That's your voice. Do you ever get conscious of that?
Yeah. It's my first season. There were a lot of nerves before every game with the Black Caps. It was quite and I suppose that first big one with the Silver Ferns too, which was around 10,000 people. I was thinking, gosh, this is quite surreal. So yeah, you're right. It was a quick progression from 200 people, and I think about 18 months after my first time doing it, we had a match at Eden Park, which was the Black Caps versus India, and that ended up, I think, 37,000 at that game, and that's basically as much as you're going to get in a New Zealand sporting sense for a match. So that was sort of the pinnacle for me. I know everywhere else tends to be, now with India you can get 100,000, and same with the NCG and so forth. But for little old New Zealand, that's the top stuff. So it was pretty crazy.
Yeah, Jake. So I'm clearly looks like a quick progression, but I'm just wondering, did they ask you to do any trainings or do any screenings? I'm just curious if they did any of that, or was it just, hey, you're good at this, keep going?
Well, it was. What I'd done is I'd put together some tapes. So I'd done some games, some sporting matches and so forth. So I used to just lay my phone down next to me and just record myself speaking, and then clipped it up and sent it around, and that tended to do the job. Tended to do the job, I should say. It managed to get me in the right places, which was quite surprising. I thought really it was going to be a lot more rigorous, a lot harder. But as I say, I was very, very fortunate to meet a lot of the right people at the right time, and that's propelled me through. I mean, I know that so many others in New Zealand could do the job just as as well, or if not better than me. But I was just fortunate at the right times to meet the right people and get the right opportunities. Yeah.
So I was just curious, right, Jake, when you start or when you're doing this activity, right, do you have what is the research that you do for local music and stuff, right? Do you research on the music for the teams that are visiting, or do you just have a seasonal thing for summer choice music or winter choice? For instance, I seem to have this recurring collection of Coldplay being played when New Zealand are doing well, right? So this is something that just a very anecdotal observation that I had. So I'm just curious, how do you prepare for that?
Yeah, well, and it's an interesting one because basically before me there was a chap who did the music and the announcing together, and I do music and announcing for the Blues Super Rugby team at Eden Park, for instance. But for the cricket, they've actually split that role up. So I just do the announcing. So it's quite good to just focus on solely the voice stuff. And there's a chap called Kieran who has his own DJ company, a New Zealand DJ, and he provides all the equipment and he does the music. So he has a great DJ company that does a lot of events around the country, and he is pretty good at choosing the music and so forth. So he puts a lot of time and effort into that, I know, and I think he tries to change it up. I know he often tries to swing by the opposition change room, dressing room or whatever, and just listen to the music that they're playing and try. And I know, there's been a couple of times when South Africa's been over, the women's team, and they've been playing some music. So a quick Shazam of their music, and then next thing that their music's being played. But no, he's quite good at that.
It's funny that you mentioned that because when India is touring New Zealand, there seems to be a lot of Bollywood songs. So is that an input from the team? Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's I think it kind of comes down to the way that New Zealand cricket, the entity has really tried to push that. It's New Zealand cricket's a great entity who, I suppose really values the inclusion of another culture, and it's a combination of the two. It's certainly not us versus them. It's a celebration of the game, and with so many Indian New Zealanders around, and they'd come to the games and support the teams. It's a joyous occasion for everyone, not just New Zealanders going to a match.
Well, Jake, talk us through a day in the life of a ground announcer. Like, what do you do on a typical game day from beginning to end, and how do you really add, or how do you seek to add value to the proceedings on the field?
Well, it would often start with an early morning flight, because unfortunately, fortunately or unfortunately, perhaps, there's a lot of travel around with this gig and so forth in summer. So basically, often would start early morning a flight. I'm in a car at the moment, traveling, just pulled over, but traveling back from Hamilton after a match yesterday, so traveling back to Auckland. But so often start with a flight, heading to whatever venue we'll be going to. For instance, this coming Tuesday we'll be in Napier for the Black Caps Bangladesh and White Ferns Australia doubleheader. So early morning flight. We have an annual mini putt competition in Napier. Me, the DJ Kieran, Chris, who's our big screen scorer, and we have a mini putt competition whenever we go to Napier. So we'll have that in the morning, get that out of the way. Head to the grounds, probably about an hour to 90 minutes before the gates open. And that's when the event presentation team will do a lot of their checks. So we have our producer or show caller director, and that person will sort of guide us through the script and tell us how we're going to be presenting a lot of the ads and the voiceovers and the team lists and so forth. That's alongside the DJ, myself, scorer, and the big screen operator and the LED signage person too. So I suppose a few meetings there, but that's and then we sort of just get into it. The good thing is when you're a good cricket fan, you know so many players. And so, you don't have to do a massive amount of research because you know these guys already. So I don't tend to do a lot of research for a lot of those players or teams that are so much more well known. Debutante's probably a little bit different, and I quite often would work closely with the scorer who always sits to my left, and statistician, so he'll always give me some good stats and so forth. Whenever whenever a moment comes up, then that's when we'll announce something, and that's sort of from his directive as well. So, not as much preparation, I think, as people would think, because of the fact that when you're all a big cricket fan, you sort of a lot of that stuff naturally, and so you don't have to work too hard to try and find things out because you've already watched the game 5 years ago that something happened. So yeah.
Well, I've also noticed that apart from the actual cricket action, especially in between innings, if there is some sort of special event for, I don't know, you're trying to promote the game for kids who've come in and you're organizing some sort of mini competitions, you have the kids or fans come onto the field for a bit. It obviously doesn't happen in India, but I've seen it happen in other countries. And I feel like the stadium announcer is involved in that too. Am I right?
Yeah. So I mean, there's a lot of stuff sort of going around an event. Often there'll be sort of presentations in and around matches and so forth. I mean, for instance, we have the other day we had a White Ferns capping. So quite a cool initiative with New Zealand cricket. Is a lot of the White Ferns, the former White Ferns, actually haven't been capped, received their cap when they actually made their debut for New Zealand. So we had a White Ferns capping at the Basin Reserve, and managed to sort of get out there and give sort of credence to these people that have played for the country. And so we sort of read out their names, and the crowd were quite really enjoyed that, and actually while that was happening, we had kids out in the middle as well playing cricket in the middle and at the innings break. So it's all good fun.
Thanks, Jake. That's very actually revealing for a layperson myself. So you did mention that you don't typically do a lot of preparation, but you must I'm guessing here, right? Like, do you have like a prepared script or like a template that you follow, like in between overs or between like, when the block of power play ends? And second part of this question is, does this actively involve a producer, like, hosts and studios? They're always in their ears, right? Saying, okay, we're going on break in like 15 and so on and stuff like that. Is that similar to you? Do you have like a counterpart who's like kind of like nudging and giving the high level ongoings on the field?
Yeah. No, that's exactly right. So we have a producer who sits probably, I think, three spots away from me, but she's in my ear anyway. And so that person's normally a TV producer as well. One of the producers we have just finished producing and directing the America's Cup in New Zealand. And then another one we have, for instance, she's actually a cricket director and was directed the Pakistan Premier League last year, and she was the producer for the Black Clash as well, the New Zealand rugby players versus cricket players match in New Zealand. So a lot of knowledge there within the sort of presentation industry, and we have a run sheet, a script to follow at each game, which is fairly, after 3 years you get pretty used to it. So sort of when you need to do things, and at what moments, and how to do it as well. That first year was a big learning curve, because I think I was trying to figure out how to exactly say things the way I wanted, and the best way to get a crowd response as well. So that took a little bit of sort of homing in on. So we got that done in the end. I suppose it was the takeaway from the first year, and then sort of built on it in the second and third. But I think the preparation for matches is certainly certainly sort of naturally done, because when you're on tour with a series, for instance, you go from one game, for instance, yesterday, and then your next game's on Tuesday, then your next game's on Thursday, then you jump into another format, and then you may be having that new format on Saturday or whatever, and then it all sort of rolls on, and because so many of these players from that format too, I think basically I'll always try and give about an hour or two to the touring team before the tour, before they do arrive in the country, to at least just read up on the articles, and check out ESPN Cricket Info and so forth, and just get around I suppose a lot of the news, and see where the team's at.
Yeah, hi Jake. I'm very fascinated by how you sort of work in conjunction with the producer and the scorer and the big screen operator, and maybe also the TV crew. Can you give us a sort of insight into how that workflow is and how it works during a match? Yeah,
sure. So basically, so I'll start with the guy to my right, and that'll be the music guy, the DJ. So that's Kieran, and he's going to be playing the music at every 4, every 6, every wicket. So he'll be basically, that's completely his area. So he just goes off and does that. Then there's me, and I'll sort of inject whatever I need to whenever I see fit with the announcing side of things during a game. I'll be working quite closely as well with the producer, who and she'll be sort of making sure that there's if there's an ad coming up at the end of the over, then she's telling me, and she's telling Karen to make sure that the levels are up and so forth, and that I'm not speaking over an ad or anything like that. So there's always that sort of work. The scorer then will often work mostly with me and the big screen operator, because when we've got a bowling change or something, he's the chap that yells out, bowling change, we've got so-and-so now bowling from this end or whatever. More often than not, we all know, because we're all watching, and anyway, but that's that's his role. And then he's also got, I suppose, he's always looking at stats and so forth. It's quite cool. The other day he said, when we're at the Basin Reserve, he said, Jake, this is now the highest 5th wicket partnership for all matches in one-day international cricket at the Basin Reserve. So we announced that when it happened, and Devon Conway actually said after the match, and it was reported in an article, how he remembered that moment from the day, and he said that was quite special because he was out there with Daryl Mitchell, and you think this isn't just me saying a thing. This is a big team effort, with the producer, with with the scorer, and it's quite cool that our team is getting noticed in that respect, and everyone's work's doing well. So we got our event presentation scorer is his name, with the title, and then you've got the producer who's obviously calling the shots, and she'll always sort of count us into things and tell us what's coming up, the commercial obligations or any sort of activations that are happening out in the ground. We've got an MC out in the ground with the microphone and the camera, so she's always saying, sort of counting that person in, and then we've got a big screen operator. Now, this is the person that will press out or not out on the big screen. So the third umpire will say, "I'm ready to make my decision," and then that radio comes through to the big screen operator, and not out or out, and then the big screen operator will press that button. So yeah, that's our team. And then we've got our LED signage. You'll see always a signage around the ground down just beyond the boundary. That's also operated in our team too.
So this clears up one thing, that it's not the third umpire who presses the button. It is the big screen
That's
operator
right.
who presses the button. Have you always
At
thought
least in
otherwise?
New Zealand.
Okay.
Yeah, at least in New Zealand.
Yeah. Very fascinating. Now, it sounds like a lovely job for a cricket fan, right? So what are the things you love the most about your job, and what are the sort of things that you don't really like and don't like to deal with? The highs and lows.
Yeah.
We're not trying to make this sound like a job interview or an exit interview, but we're really curious. What do you love about your job? What do you hate about it?
Yeah, no, look, I tell you, well, I'll start with the hate part. I think this season I've probably well and truly got over, and I'm sick and tired of the travel. The first season was quite cool because I'd never really traveled around the country to that degree. And when you travel to Dunedin, then you're in Hamilton, then you're in Wellington, then you're in Christchurch, Auckland, Mount Maunganui, and it's basically your whole summer is traveling. That's pretty fun when you first do it, and especially if you haven't seen these places a lot before. But now I suppose this is the third season, it's sort of getting a bit tedious, and your late nights and your early mornings to, get the right plane and or pick up a rental car to drive to a new city. It's all a bit tedious, and I suppose that's probably the thing that this season I thought actually, I'll probably not enjoying the travel as much as I was, but I think the part I love is that it is honestly one of those jobs I never thought that I could have ever been able to get. I thought I could dream of it, and maybe it would happen in 50 years' time and I'll do one game, but that wasn't the case. And so it's just one of those, sort of fantasy jobs that you get, that you're just amazed that you've got. And so I sort of pinch myself at every moment, and always try and take every match in, and and look around and think, actually, you got to give it the respect that it deserves. I know it is a job, and sometimes people will, rock on into a job and sort of just clock in and clock out. But actually, a lot of these people are paying good money to come to the cricket, and they want to be entertained, so you got to be on. And it's just a real privilege, I think, to be able to be in this position, and to be lucky enough to have the gig.
I think already you've cleared one misconception that I at least had, was that each stadium had an announcer, for just that stadium. But it sounds like you're like the assigned ground announcer for all games involving New Zealand cricket. So it doesn't matter which stadium in the country. So you go to all of the stadiums where the games take place.
That's right. So basically, the whole team does, not only just me. So we've always got the same DJ. We've got the same, myself as announcer, scorer. Everyone's the same. So we spend a lot of time on the road together. And a lot of these people, I feel very sorry. Well, I know it's that's their role and so forth. But these guys work so hard with packing in the equipment and packing out the next day and driving it to the next place. And it's not like you can just jump on a plane with 20 speakers and amps and cabling and so forth. So these guys are driving down, here, there, and everywhere, and I just sort of swan in right at the last moment, and and not have to set up anything, because I suppose all I've got to come to work with is my voice. So these guys work pretty hard, and it's a big summer. It is. So as I say, with the travel, and I ended up doing the Super Smash this season and looked after Christchurch, but I live in Auckland, so there's 5 matches down there that I travelled down for, and then the Northern Districts as well in Hamilton. So while some people, I think, in the international realm got a bit of a break, I just carried right through, which was quite enjoyable too.
Wow. Well, as Indian cricket fans, we're a little partial to, hearing about your experiences when the Indian team tours New Zealand.
Yeah.
Do you have any anecdotes or anything memorable to share, in your job whenever India has, come to New Zealand?
Yeah, well, India was I think the second tour that I'd done as an announcer for New Zealand cricket, and it was quite. I could not believe how much. I just couldn't believe the volume of fans that India had. I mean, I know that Indian cricket fans are the best fans in the world. They are the best sporting fans in the world. It's incredible. And but I didn't quite realise it was going to stretch so far, even into New Zealand. And it was just an incredible tour. And we've had India out here twice now, while I've been having the announcing role, and it's always a favourite tour because the crowds are going to be absolutely electric. That the hotels are going to be swamped outside with heaps of fans, carrying flags. And I remember coming back after a game to the hotel, because we stay in the same hotels, and we're always on the same planes and so forth. So as the players, so. I realised I was in complete and utter Black Caps kit. So I had Black Caps shirt on, training shirt, hoodie. I had Black Caps shorts on, a Black Caps hat. And all these people were sort of wondering who this guy is that's going to get out of this car, because it was sort of black windows. And so I thought, all right, well I'll have these guys on. So I jumped out of the car and covered my face, sort of scurried close to the hotel and pretended I was some player, and everyone's running towards me. And then next thing, I just take my hat down, and then everyone cracks up laughing, because obviously I'd had them on, and they go, who the hell's this guy? But that was good fun, and always good fun to meet the fans.
You should have offered to give some. You should have offered to give some autographs.
Oh, no way. But it was quite funny. They clearly thought I was a Black Cap. And then they look at me and go, I've never seen this guy before. But I think actually probably the most memorable game, New Zealand-India game that I'd done, was the one at Eden Park that had sold out 37,000. And it was pretty incredible when you look back. And I thought, well, 18 months ago, I was doing 200 people. And that was the big stuff for me. And now it's all of a sudden at the National Stadium for 37,000. And the one moment I think that I'll never forget was when MS Dhoni came out to bat, and I couldn't hear myself through the speakers, even though it was pushed up to the max, and I was screaming. That was the most unbelievable atmosphere I've ever felt, was when Dhoni just walks out, and the place just goes nuts. Everyone's screaming, Dhoni, Dhoni, Dhoni. And, that guy's an absolute legend. And it was amazing to be able to, sort of announce these guys' names. I look back and think, crikey, imagine being able to introduce Sachin Tendulkar. But actually, when I'll look back at it, I'll think, I was able to introduce, MS Dhoni and Virat Kohli to the crease at Eden Park, and I think those memories will be standing with me for a long time in a cricket sense.
Right. Well, let's move our focus to New Zealand cricket now. One of the things that's really fascinated me, and I was talking to the guys about this earlier, is that of all the big teams in international cricket, there are only probably 2 or 3 teams, or 2 or 3 countries, where both men's cricket and women's cricket are treated equally, or at least promoted equally, and a lot of importance is given to get fans into the stadium and really hype the series, or have players interact with the fans, and not just for men's but for women's cricket. And I've always maintained, or I've always thought, that New Zealand cricket does a fine job of that, especially promoting the women's game, the New Zealand women's cricket team. I'm just curious, what is your take on just the coexistence of men and women's cricket in New Zealand? I'm assuming the men's team are very supportive of the women's team and so on.
Yeah, I think we've seen a clear push. I think in the last 2 years, you can clearly see that there's great work being done by NZC to really push the women's game, and I think that's made sort of manifest in the way that the Super Smash, the domestic T20 competition, has the women playing always as a double header, so everything's a double header, which brings a few more people, I think, to those games and those women's games, and they get that exposure, and it's all a part of the broadcast deal too, that the women are on the TV and being broadcast too. We see, for instance, with the Bangladesh New Zealand T20 tour, that it's double headers with the White Ferns versus Australia, which keeps more people watching as well. So I think those initiatives are really good from New Zealand cricket, because they get to give those the women cricketers that opportunity to be exposed to more people. And I really do think with the investment into the game, I think women's cricket is going to only go up, and the talent's going to be is just going to soar, and I think we are going to see more people watching. I think New Zealand, it's going to be an interesting thing to watch this Women's World Cup that's happening in 2022 here, the ICC World Cup. It's going to be interesting because I think sort of largely New Zealand doesn't get great cricket crowds. We're a nation that tends to stay home and watch cricket more so than go to the venues. So it'll be interesting to see how the crowds play. I really hope that those crowds are sold out for what's going to be a great sporting occasion, which is the World Cup. So I think too, actually, not only cricket in New Zealand, you've got the Women's Rugby World Cup that's now happening next year, and the year after that, the FIFA World Cup, the Women's FIFA World Cup, is going to be in New Zealand. So, there's a lot of women's sporting events coming to New Zealand, and I think I suppose the culture over the next few years is going to be, there's going to be great emphasis on women in sport. And I think that's a good thing. And I think, I think that with more investment, it can only get better. I think that's what we've seen specifically in New Zealand. We've seen a lot of that in rugby, a lot of money going into the women's game, and it's gotten a hell of a lot better. And you've got some entertaining rugby players. You've got some entertaining matches taking place, and that's great to see.
Yeah, so kind of following up on that, Jake, is it similar at the club level, where like most clubs have both a men's and women's team? Because that's one difference I've seen sort of in India, where majority of the clubs are, men only, and even at the grassroots level, where there's academies and stuff, if there's, they're taking in young girls as well as boys, or is it mostly restricted to boys?
Yeah, well, I think on that, it's an interesting sort of observation I've sort of made this season with the Super Smash, and I might be completely wrong, but there is a lot of young girls playing cricket. There's a lot of young women playing sort of in that sort of 16 to 23, and that Super Smash competition is a lot. And I think that's perhaps because a lot of the pathways in for younger women in cricket, with perhaps schools and the like, getting involved early. I think it's probably a bit harder for people to get involved a bit later as women. So we're seeing a lot of young girls in there. I think at the club level, I think numbers are always struggling. Not only I think in the women's game, but the men's game too. Everyone wants more numbers, but I'm not too connected with the club level as much as I am with sort of the others. So, but I think everyone struggles, and I think the women's game in New Zealand isn't any different in that respect.
Yeah, so we were talking about numbers, right? And it's because of finances and numbers that New Zealand play only 4 test matches a summer. And that's a bummer for all of us, because we like watching test cricket in New Zealand. We like watching New Zealand play. So what's the kind of local feeling about that? Do people want to watch more test cricket? Are people up in arms about this, or do they not like that? What's going on the ground?
Yeah, well, I think last year we had, I think we had 4. Yeah, we did. And the year before we were scheduled to have 5 as well. I think I mean, personally, I'd love more tests. I think everyone wants more tests. All the cricket fans want more test matches. But I think specifically in New Zealand, I know that T20s are the ones that draw the crowds. And I know we don't have the luxury of the sort of the population density of places like England, where you can just pack out anywhere you go because there's so many people around. And Auckland is. I think I learnt this in my geography class at high school, which is a while ago now, but I think back then I was told that Auckland is the second largest city in the world for urban sprawl, which means it's a large city and it's not dense at all. So a population of over 1 million people, just over 1 million people, but they're so spread out, and the infrastructure to get to venues isn't that flash. And then I suppose around the country as well, the population is sort of well supported. So it's always tough to get good crowds, but I think they are building as well. I think some test crowds are starting to surprise me a bit in the patronage. So that's good. But I think it's the age-old thing that every cricket fan wants more test matches. And I'm no different. I'd love to see personally. I'd love to see Australia come over and play 4 or 5 match series. Would be incredible.
It's a pity because New Zealand are playing very good cricket nowadays, and they have a good crop of Test cricketers as well. So we should have more than 2 Test series, which are like sort of truncated, right?
I agree. No, I agree, and it's I hope it in the future that we manage to get more. And I mean, it depends on so many factors, and it's so tough with that. But I know that the team's working hard, and I know it's an interesting one too, because a lot of those tours are confirmed so far in advance, years and years in advance, and that negotiation process goes on for a while. So perhaps with COVID that might throw things away, and we might see some changes to the tours or whatever, but we'll just have to wait and see.
So, Jake, switching to the ongoing series, you kind of mentioned Devon Conway already, but not just from the men's perspective, White Fern's perspective as well. Are there any specific cricketers that you've noticed on the domestic scene who think have a really good chance of doing well on the international stage? Well,
I think that actually, on that note, I think New Zealand's probably got depth for the first time in a while. I think a lot of the players you've seen at the level this year have really stepped up. For instance, you've got Jacob Duffy, who made his debut at T20 level, T20 international level, and took a raft of wickets and was just incredible that day against Pakistan. I think it was Pakistan, and so you got him who comes and plays one match and then goes off and that's it, and that's it for him. So I think he's one chap who made a great contribution in his first game, and captaining Otago as well in the Super Smash. I think he's doing pretty well, but it's I mean, I can remember sort of thinking the same of Kyle Jamieson about 3 years ago when you were seeing him in domestic cricket, and you're thinking, crikey, this guy could go well. And I think you're seeing a lot of New Zealand cricketers now taking their opportunities in that respect. They make their debut and then absolutely nail it. I think you've seen the same with Will Young in the one-day squad and the T20 squad and the Bangladesh tour. You've seen the same with Devon Conway. I mean, that man is just absolutely, I think I tweeted yesterday, he is absolutely the next massive name in New Zealand cricket. From my perspective, I think, you've got your Ross Taylors, your Tim Southeys, your Trent Bolts, your Kane Williamsons, and I think you're going to have a massive name in Devon Conway too. He's just fantastic. So I think, for the first time, as I say, there's good depth, and I think that's converting into good results.
Yeah, it certainly feels that way. For us as neutral fans, we really enjoy seeing Kyle Jamieson bowl, but it blows our mind when we think about it that he's pacer number 4 in that lineup.
Yeah.
So really, that definitely points to the depth, and even in the limited overs scheme of things, you see people as quick as Lockie Ferguson and players like Michelle Santner. So definitely feels that way. So with that said, with all that depth, what do you think about New Zealand's chances against India in the World Test Championship final. Obviously, it's going to be held in Southampton. Conditions you could say somewhat similar to New Zealand. Do you fancy them winning the trophy?
Yeah, well, I think the conditions in that respect, as you say, similar to New Zealand, and New Zealand thrives in New Zealand conditions. So I think that's going to be, a great advantage to the Kiwis. But you can never, I can't pick this one because it's going to be, you're playing India. And it's something that we haven't known. We haven't seen this before, and it's the first World Test Championship final like this. So it's going to be a very, very tough one to pick. I think if Kyle Jamieson comes out and plays an absolute blinder, I think if Devon Conway manages to get his way into the team and converts his opportunity as well. And you see a lot of those players on fine form, then I think it's going to be an amazing encounter. And I think New Zealand's chances could be very good. But look, I don't know. This could be either way. I mean, it's a shame it's one test. I personally would like to see a bit of a series because if this thing ends in a draw, then that'll be sort of a sort of salt in the wound, I think, of maybe another match that New Zealand didn't win in England in recent years. But so I think no. But I'm looking forward to it. I've already said to most of the people in my circles that I'm not going to sleep those nights because it's going to be overnight for me in New Zealand. So I'm going to watch every ball and love it. But I think regardless, you've got two incredibly good teams in good form, and it's going to be a joyous occasion to watch.
I was just saying I couldn't agree more. It would be ideal if it was a 3-match series. But hey, this is the first time they're doing this. Hopefully they'll, have a better iteration next time. But I think with New Zealand, I believe they're going to England just before. So they might have some match practice as well. So I personally think New Zealand have a slightly upper edge. But as you say, India's a good team as well. So you never know.
Indian fans have the baggage of being 5 for 3 again in swinging condition. We'll have
India
to counter
versus
that.
New Zealand in England. We are still getting over it, and I'm assuming you're trying to get over the World Cup final. So
Yeah.
both sides supporters, we have a lot of resolution needed. So hopefully we'll get.
Well, I think the funny thing is that regardless, of whoever won that semi-final between India or New Zealand, I think either side's, whoever lost that game was going to support whoever won that game in the final. Right. It would have been pretty tough to see New Zealanders support England or Australia, just for the fact that there's that old rivalry. And so had India ended up winning that game, I think we would have been right behind India in the final. And I think we noticed that as well with India's great support in the final too.
I think that made it really heartbreaking for a lot of us, especially the ones who supported New Zealand in the final. I don't even know if I would have felt that same way for India, because being an Indian cricket fan, I assume I would have felt the same. But this may be a cliche at this point, but the New Zealand players are just so likable that, especially led by someone like Kane Williamson, you want to see them succeed. You want to see them lift a trophy. And when India was out of the running, the next logical team to support seemed like New Zealand. And if you're going to lose the final, I think that was one of the worst ways to lose it. So it's hard enough for us neutral fans. I can't even imagine the reaction that in New Zealand, because we got to see a lot of winning reactions for England supporters. How did that go over in New Zealand when they lost that way?
It was horrific. I mean, I was just beside myself. That was a horrific day. I think the result came through at about. I mean, I'd watched the whole game, but I think it finished at about 6 a.m. New Zealand time. So I had work at about 9, so I ended up going in a bit early and locked myself in an office and decided I was going to. Just lay low for the day, because it was I tell you it was a pretty emotional time. It was a pretty emotional time, and look, I mean, I think the Kiwis, regardless of the result, were so proud of the boys, and I think we've seen that a couple of times as well with New Zealand losses. The country gets around our team just as much as if they ended up winning. I was asked about this too not too long ago, of why sort of New Zealanders reacted the way they did or whatever. But I think, and sort of the way that the Black Caps carry themselves, and I think that it sort of comes into a larger discussion of the culture of New Zealand. And I think we have a thing over here called the tall poppy syndrome, that if anyone sort of walks around with their chest out and sort of skites a little bit, then people seem to cut them down pretty fast because they're being a tall poppy or whatever. So I think the idea of being humble is quite an important thing in New Zealand. And if you're not humble, I think you get cut down by your peers fairly fast. So I think that's why New Zealanders were able to look to the Black Caps then and say, actually, you lost this game, as per the rules, and that's all good. The way that you carried yourselves was something that the country was proud of, and that was, despite the loss, that was something I think that Kiwis could have a smile at the end of the day for.
Well, Jake, I'm really sorry if I dredged up painful memories there, but I thought it was important to hear, your reaction. But hey, I want to thank you so much for spending so much time with us and kind of giving us a peek into the job that you do, and just the way you contribute in your own capacity to cricket-loving fans who come to watch the games at the stadium. We'll let you get back on the road. But again, Jake, thank you so much for your time, and best of luck with everything that you're doing.
Thanks, guys. It's been great to chat.
Well, that's it for this episode of The Last Wicket. A special thank you to Jake for coming on the show and talking to us about his career. Please do follow him on Twitter at Jacob O'Flaherty and reach out to him if you would like to know more about getting into his field. Meanwhile, do rate and subscribe to this podcast to be notified of new episodes. Follow us on your social media feeds and do spread the word about this show. Once again, thank you for listening, and we hope you come back for more. From all of us here at The Last Wicket, have a great week.